Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and how are you doing today? I hope you are all doing very well as we find ourselves swiftly approaching the end of this year, 2019. Speaking of which, today I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to speak to you about some further comments I have about my favorite releases from the Criterion collection from this year, 2019. Today, I'd like to speak to you about my favorite individual new releases. So the Criterion collection released a large number of films on physical media throughout this year, 2019. And among those, of course, were some box sets. There were also some upgrades from currently existing DVDs or OOP titles and the like. But also, there were a number of titles that were new releases and that were individual releases. In other words, these were titles that were not part of any box set, but they were in fact individual releases. And these were also titles that were not previously an older Criterion release, a DVD or a Laserdisc, but these are in fact newly introduced titles into the Criterion collection. So these are new individual releases from the Criterion collection from this year, 2019. There were so many, and so many great releases of excellent films of stellar quality, which we have come to expect from the Criterion collection, of course. So, as with these other lists that I have been trying to compose for various themes that I have talked about in previous videos, this particular list is one where I made a top 5 favorite individual new releases from the Criterion collection from this year. But please note that it was an incredibly difficult task for me to undergo. In other words, this list was one that I thought about for a great deal of time. Even now, I must admit that I could probably wake up tomorrow and come up with a different list because, as I said in previous occasions, the Criterion collection releases over the course of this year were so varied, so vast, and quite wide in scope that I think it really, in a great way, challenges me to try to come up with some kind of my own subjective, definitive list of my favorites. In other words, I think it's in many ways a kind of impossible task. But that being said, I have done my very best. And so here is my list for my favorite, top 5 favorite new individual releases. And once again, this is my own subjective take. So this may likely differ from your own personal choices, and that is perfectly fine. And what's more, that is really great. So it's great that we can share opinions and discuss and really learn from each other about what we all like with respect to the Criterion collection. But for purposes of this video, please let me share with you my top 5 favorite individual new releases from the Criterion collection during this year, 2019. Number 5. This is spy number 983. This is from 1966 and 1967. The work is War and Peace. War and Peace. Filmmaker is Sergei Bondarchuk. This is nothing short of an overwhelming masterwork of epic proportions in terms of the audacity of scope and vision, in terms of capturing an almost extraordinary breadth of vision on the screen in cinematic visual terms. We also have, at its core, of course, the story of War and Peace carried through over separate, distinct sub-films or installment films, as it were, that creates the entirety as a whole. And we never, in a very miraculous way, we never lose sight of the individual human elements, because the characters are so clearly drawn from the very outset. There are no elements of confusion. Everything is beautifully laid out. Everything is wonderfully organized. And also things are set forth in a manner that leads to an ultimate, triumphant, tragic, and heart-pounding sense of grandeur and spectacle, which never loses sight of its humanity. So the film is War and Peace, or the work is War and Peace. What I love too about this work is it is almost, how shall I put it? It has a breathless kind of pace, and notwithstanding its incredibly long running time over the course of several distinct installments, this never lags. There is a beautiful sense of rhythm and timing that, as I say, always gives us focus as to the human story that is always at the heart of this particular tale of War and Peace. And I should say also that while it maintains an unnervingly consistent and magnificent, breathtaking view of cinema and the scope of battle, and also the scope of the reach of human endeavor, shall we say, it also expresses itself in moments of poetic flourish, of expressionistic tones that can be described as being cinematically, visually poetic or metaphorically significant. They create a sense of dizzying style that is delicately beautiful and oftentimes haunting and unnerving, but for a purpose. And that purpose is to do something to the human heart, to the person that is viewing this superb masterpiece. By the end of it, one might feel totally spent of energy and might feel a sense of exhilarating exhaustion. But I think that might be part of the point here, because I think we are meant not only to watch this film, but in a sense, my friends, my feeling is that perhaps we are really meant to live and breathe this work of art. This is a charged and truly overwhelmingly magnificent work. This is War and Peace. Next, this is my number 4 choice. This is Spy Number 969. This is from the year 1964. The filmmaker is Jan Nemetz. The film is Diamonds of the Night. Diamonds of the Night is one of those stirring and disturbing and very moving, haunting portraits of 1960s cinema, in my humble opinion. It is so stirring because it is presenting a tale and a world that is very dark, that is cold, that is bleak, that is also filled with many inconsistencies, many dangers, many villains, and a lot of uncertainty. It is also presenting this idea or this notion or concept that is, I think, something that we all can appreciate to a certain level. And it's this idea of fear, and it's the notion of death. So this film paints a very bleak and cold and stark picture that is haunting and moving and challenging. But, my friends, it is a film of poetic majesty, of great cinematic and enigmatic power in the way in which it uses cinema to portray visions, to portray fantasies, almost akin to hallucinatory revelation, perhaps. There are also visions of possibility. There are also temporal shifts. There are also moments of cinematic poetry akin to a kind of ambiguity, and all towards a kind of single purpose or a singularity of purposes. And namely, it is meant to portray, as I say, a bleak and dark world. Is there hope in this world? Perhaps yes, likely not. Is there a kind of sense of morality and justice? Who knows? Is it filled with any kind of possibility for escape? That is left to you, the viewer, to try to interpret and to discover as you watch this film, because it yields no easy answer because of the weightiness of the themes that it is trying to explore. And it explores them with a somber tone, a tone that is respectful of the subject matter, and yet it has a sharpness of eye and also a clearness of vision that is undeniably and inescapably something quite deep yet dark. It has something to do with the idea of death. And what a poetic expression this film is of that particular subject, my friends. It is an all-consuming, supremely powerful work of cinematic poetry, whose power of vision and deepness of effect is, simply put, startling. This is a startling work of art that shakes one to one's core. It leaves one feeling uneasy, uncertain, and also not quite knowing where one is, except feeling a kind of palpable sense of unknowing. Is it dread? Is it something akin to fear? Or is it something that perhaps might lead to something more hopeful? Who knows? This is a tough, bleak, challenging work on many levels. It is also immensely rewarding and deeply moving. This film is a must-see. I strongly urge you to take a look at it and explore it if you have the opportunity. This is the film Diamonds of the Night. Number 3. This is spine number 965. The year is 1970. The filmmaker is Barbara Loden. The film is Wanda. This is one of those truly unshakably effective works of American art cinema from the 1970s. There is an unshakable earthy quality in the sense that it feels like we are watching something true to life open up before our very eyes. We are watching characters, and in particular our main character, as a kind of person that might be seen as being in situations, dire straits situations, maybe down and out type of situations, situations of real challenge and distress that require a type of mental fortitude that is not present in a lot of people. But the film also presents a world that is uneasy. It is a world that is, it could be seen as being quite cold, perhaps even villainous. And not only villainous and cold in terms of the people that occupy the world, but also something akin to the world itself in which the people occupy. So there is something going on here that is almost bigger than oneself. But at the heart of this film is, of course, the main character, the title of the film. And we have a depiction of a person that is not necessarily wholly likable or wholly unlikable. This is a person who is depicted as being an authentic human being. And an authentic human being who makes certain choices, who makes certain subtle decisions that might cause little ripples or great ripples going forward in terms of what she is forced to do or what she is faced with and the choices that she is faced with going forward. This film also serves as a type of crime film, but it is much more than that. It operates quite brilliantly as a crime film, but it operates also on levels of explorations of a human soul that is faced with certain life choices and dilemmas that depending on how one chooses, can cause great effects going forward. And it is this sense of, I wouldn't call it self-discovery, but I would call it this idea of choice and existentialism, all, again, within the context of these beautifully down-to-earth, gritty, in-your-face tones that never lose sight of the important intimate connection between the viewer on the one hand and the characters of the film on the other hand. And when the film plays out to its denouement and conclusion, there's something quite there's something quite moving and devastating at the same time, and it leads to an ultimate effect that is shattering, that is haunting, and that is also oh so human. This is an unforgettable viewing experience, an absolutely unforgettable viewing experience. This film is Wanda. Number 2. This is Spy Number 973. This is from 1979, and the filmmaker is Gillian Armstrong. The film is My Brilliant Career. My Brilliant Career is a film that, if you have not seen it, my friends, stop this video and find it and watch it right now. because you are in for a real treat that is so subtle and quiet, with its intimate moments between characters, and also very grand and ambitious in terms of the movement of human emotions amidst a society or societal norms at the time that the film is depicting, and how that is running parallel to or running afoul with the concept and the choice and also the desire for something that we can call or label as being individualism. That is a very powerful type of message or mode or method of filmmaking or telling stories in a narrative cinematic sense. This is a film that is exploring the idea of the individual versus the society or societal norms, and this idea of expectations in specific terms with regard to the main character, played with a kind of effervescence by the brilliant Judy Davis. In the context of this main character, it is about the idea of what is expected of this young woman during this time. What is expected of a young woman who wants to somehow find herself and discover who she is, but she seems to be living in a time and place that might not necessarily be willing to provide her with the room and space to grow the way she seems to feel like she wants to. How does someone like that react to the world? And how does someone like that find herself in this world? Will she even be able to successfully find herself in this world, given how, quote unquote, the deck seems to be stacked against her in a certain sense of the word? But it is not merely just a matter of individualism versus society, because that's what makes this film great. It is a nuanced portrait, because we know also that what society seems to be trying to offer her, and this is in the form of certain romantic interest and certain characters, in particular the Sam Neill character. What this exploration by this film seems to be suggesting is that it is not necessarily the fact that society is providing a cold alternative to individualism and the individualistic exploration of self-identity. No, it seems also to be offering something that is not necessarily outside the realm of realistic and reasonable human desire. In other words, society too seems to be offering a reasonably reasonable sense of solace, if you will. And of course, that is also something subject to the interpretation of the viewer, whether or not that is something that is ultimately to the benefit of the main character or not. Will she go with the love interests here, or will she follow a different path, that sort of thing? But that sort of story is not painted in black and white terms, my friends. It is painted in very nuanced and delicately complex ways and manners that makes this film so thoughtful, and the thoughtfulness lingers on forever after watching this film, after completing this film. And as I say, it is anchored by the liveliness and vivacious energy given to us by the utterly sublime performance by Judy Davis, the great Judy Davis. This film has so much to offer, and it moves me so deeply that I cannot get it out of my mind. What a great film this is. This is My Brilliant Career. Now, let me share with you my number one favorite new individual release from the Criterion Collection from this year, 2019. It was an incredibly difficult thing to think about on the one hand, because as I said before, there were so many great titles, too many to be able to speak about in one simple video. So there are many titles that I tried to consider when making this list on the one hand. But on the other hand, my friends, when I was thinking about my number one favorite film that was a new individual release from the Criterion Collection from this year, one film seemed to emerge for me, and it has never left me. I've seen it many times. I've seen it many times prior to its emergence in the Criterion Collection, because it has been made available before. But there was something majestic about seeing it in the Criterion Collection. There was something awesomely powerful upon viewing it once again, this time on the Blu-ray. And it grabbed me, and it never has let go since. The film is Spine Number 993 from 1960. The filmmaker is Ritwik Ghatak. And the film, my friends, is The Cloud-Capped Star. The Cloud-Capped Star is my favorite individual new release from the Criterion Collection from 2019. This is one of those remarkable, utterly remarkable achievements in cinema. It is so beautiful. It is so haunting. It is a moving film that, on the one hand, seems to be relying on a kind of cinematic tradition of neo-realistic tendencies. In other words, it seems to be trying to depict in cinematic realism terms, the story of a family in particular, story of some siblings in a particular moment in time. But this familial dynamic is not only presented and couched in terms of cinematic realism, but it is also presented in methods of visual poetry and also sonic or audio or musical moments of poetry and brilliance. Cinema is being employed here to heighten something that is almost indescribable in the human soul. Something akin or something to do with the connections that we have with other human beings. In this case, the connections between a brother and a sister. And how those connections are tested, how they might be on the verge of breaking, how they might be remedied, if at all, and how they are strengthened and how they have been forged through time and sweat and blood, and how they are ultimately resolved through the turmoil and trials and tribulations, both great and small, of human existence, and what happens as a result of that. And all through this, my friends, we have brilliant flourishes of a kind of cinematic grammar that goes beyond the textbook in a certain way. It reaches into one's heart, these flourishes, and they turn the film, which is already a brilliant film, into an almost transcendental experience. In other words, this film becomes something greater because it is almost like the film itself is an excuse for an almost pure expression of something that we can call an inner beauty of the soul. So this is all to say that the cloud-capped star is a kind of, for me anyway, it is a kind of expression that I'm so happy to be able to say that I've been able to experience, because it is one of those rare expressions of cinema that it teaches and illuminates and enlightens and also provides insight into a particular element of the world. But also it transcends that and gives us something that is universally a kind of, not necessarily message film, but something with a more fundamental flourish, something that is akin to what we can all feel deep down in our hearts. This is something that is so great about cinema. It is the ability to express the otherwise inexpressible. And that is certainly true for this beautiful film, my friends. This is The Cloud-Capped Star. Okay, my friends, that's it for now. So, do you have any thoughts or comments? What about you? What were some of your favorite new individual releases from this year, 2019? They can be in the Criterion collection. They can be outside the Criterion collection as well. I am always happy to hear what it is you have to say about cinema, because it teaches me so much every single time. So I'd love to hear what it is you have to say. So until we meet again, my friends, please be happy and healthy and well. And please, please, please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, cheers.